In the last lecture, you learned how to call setState correctly if your new state depends on your old state and there is a danger of editing this old state at the same point of time anywhere else in the application, because setState actually runs asynchronously. Now, as we have a good way for setting the state in such cases, we also have a better way of handling props. At least in some use cases, this might be better. Mostly if you write components which might be used by other developers during their development process. You can restrict the types and values you receive for your props, like for person.js. There we receive 4 important props: click, name, age, and changed. Now, since it's our application and we test it regularly, we have no danger of passing the wrong values probably. But we can still enforce certain values to really ensure that age always is a string or a number, and that name always is a string or a number. Like in our case, app.js age is a number. Now, if we were to pass a string, our app would still work correctly, but maybe we do some calculations with that, and therefore we definitely need a number. Then we want to make sure that a warning or an error is thrown during development if a developer uses our component incorrectly. Put in other words, we want to check the types of the incoming properties to make sure that they are getting used correctly. And for that, there's an extra library or extra package you can add to your React app. So let's do that. I'll do this with the built-in terminal, and there I run npm install --save to save an entry in the package.json file, and then it's simply called prop types. This is by the React team, just outsourced into its own package, and it gives us access to some utility features to check the type of our property. So here in the person.js file, we can use it by first of all importing prop types from that package. So import prop types, that's the default export of this package, from prop types, like this. Now, how do we use prop types then? You simply use it by going below your class definition, then taking your class, so person, that is the name of this class in the end, and there you now simply add the prop types property. You're basically editing this class after it was defined. Prop types is a JavaScript object, and there you can now have key value pairs where your keys or properties are the names of the props, so click, name, and so on, and the values are the conditions, the rules. So here we could say we have a click property, condition is about to follow. We have a name property, a age property, and a change property. Now all the conditions are missing. And after this lecture, you'll find an article where I list all available conditions you may add and you may use for defining your rule sets. Now, for example, you could say that click should be a function. So you can access prop types. That's this object you're importing from the prop types library. And that exposes a couple of different rules or types you can enforce. For example, func. And with that, you're saying the value I get passed into my click property has to be a function, which of course makes a lot of sense because we're trying to execute it as a function. For name, we might say prop types should be a string. And for age, prop types might be a number. And by the way, there are even more advanced types. You can even define the exact shape of an object you're receiving. So which properties it should have and which types the properties of that object should have. You can go really detailed. And again, I strongly recommend having a look at the article after this lecture to learn about all the possibilities, as there are a lot. So here, changed maybe should also be a function. And that is a very basic prop type setup. Now if we go back to the application and reload, go to the console to see any potential error messages, you see everything works. Now if we try to pass a wrong property though, for example by going to the app.js file and setting the age of Max to 28 as a string, Now you see if I click toggle persons, we get an error here. Failed prop type, invalid prop age of type string, expected number. This is exactly what we get there and why this is helpful to us. We ensure that we're not receiving wrong props. And again, this is mostly useful if you're working on team, if you're building components which get used by other persons, by other people, and where it's crucial that you get the right props. Because maybe sometimes you have props where it doesn't really matter if it's a string or a number because you're just printing it to the screen anyways. In other cases, it might matter. So you don't have to use prop types in every component you define. Again, one reason that speaks against it is that it doesn't work in functional components, which you should use as often as possible though. But in some root level components, you might want to control which property enters it and which property you pass on. And again, especially important if you work with or for other people.